All right, good afternoon, everybody. Sorry, my dog is running around upstairs. She's all psyched because she just went outside. So if you hear some thumping or anything, that's her just running around playing upstairs. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. If you got a question, go ahead and post it below. If you're on an Android or not Android, if you're on a mobile device, which could be an Android device, you can post your questions below where it says "Chat with Top Speed Golf Instructors." If you're on a bigger screen like a laptop or something like that, desktop computer, it's probably going to be to the right of the screen unless you got it blowing up or something like that. But yeah, just put your questions on there. We'll go ahead and we'll start here with Philip L. That says my psychologist recommends. My psychologist recommends to go with a shot pattern I have on a particular day, rather than trying to use different shots depending on what hole I'm playing. What is your take on this? All right, so okay, I see what you're asking. So basically, you're saying if your shot is your natural kind of swing that day is resulting in a little draw, then that's the shot pattern that you should go with for that day. Now that can work just fine, but that's not what the best golfers do. That's not what the best golfers, the lower handicap players are doing. So if you want to be good, you want to be able to work the ball in all different directions, and also you want to know how to be able to correct things in your swing. Because just because your shot pattern when you tee off is a draw, that doesn't mean that may turn into a hook toward the end or a block to the right as you get through your round. It's a long day. 3 or 4 hours. Things can change a lot. So keep that in mind whenever you're working on that. But yeah, you can go with that. You can kind of go with what comes naturally to you, but understand that that's not really what the best players do. Best players can work the ball left to right, right to left. They can hit it straight, they can hit it high, they can hit it low. And learning how to be able to do that and to be able to control that, that's really how you're going to be able to play your best golf. Now, everyone's got a go-to shot. Everyone has a shot that they're most comfortable with. Like for me, for example, I'm most comfortable with just a little bit, just a little tiny baby fade. That's what I'm most comfortable with. That's my natural kind of shot pattern, is a little bit of a baby fade. So typically when I'm trying to hit a shot and I don't have to hit a draw or it doesn't call for a lower trajectory or higher trajectory, I'm just hitting a little baby fade in there. That's just my stock kind of shot. But for you, that might be a draw. But when I need to hit a draw, or when I need to hit a bigger fade, or when I need to hit one low, I know what I need to do to make that happen. And those are things you can practice and so on and so forth. So sure, yeah, you can go out there and play just fine golf, but to play at a high level, you need to be able to do the other things, the other shot patterns. Not connected for some reason. So I'm sorry if this is cutting out, but for some reason it's saying it's disconnecting and connecting again. But anyway, sometimes it's going to be, I don't have great control of it sometimes. Our feel is constantly changing. So some days to get my little baby fade or to get through a round, I need to feel like I'm drawing the ball to hit it straight. So we need to be able to adjust our feel to get the desired result that we want. So and also, what if you go out to the course and your natural shot is a big old slice? Well, that's going to kill your distance. And if you're playing in the wind, forget it. You're going to have a hard, because you're putting too much spin on the ball. The wind's just going to take it everywhere. So I don't, you can play golf that way. That's completely fine, but it's not what the best players do. And that's not how you're going to be able to play golf at a high level. You're just not going to be able to play golf at a high level, most likely, if you work that way. All right. So Paul T says, my practice swing looks good according to my son, a +3 handicap, but my actual swing at address of the ball is not the same or as good as practice swing. How do I fix it, Paul T? So this is actually an optical illusion many times of your practice swing looking much better than your actual swing with the golf ball. And this is really just to the naked eye. And I used to actually think this too, but then you really look more deeply at your practice swing and realize that it's actually not a very good swing, because the only thing that matters in golf is impact, right? So when you're taking a practice swing, there's no impact involved. But if you were to make it to where what if the golf ball was there? I think you would find some things that would be pretty interesting. So typically when I see people who tell me that their practice swing looks really, really good and their swing with the golf ball looks terrible is when they're working on the release of the club. They're releasing this club early. They're flipping through contact. And when you're doing that and then they do a practice swing and they see, okay, I'm releasing this club out in front perfectly, almost always I see one, the face is completely wide open. When they're coming in and they're releasing this club out in front, that club face at impact is wide open. And I know it's hard to see on video because the club head is moving very quickly, but there's a trick that you can use that you can see. Look at the back of your hand. Most people are wearing a glove on their lead hand, and you can see the logo of the glove. So if you look at address, the hand is moving much slower than the club head. So you'll typically be able to see the hand at contact. So if you look at address, you'll be able to see, like right now, you can see probably about 2 knuckles here on my lead hand. And you can also kind of see where my watch is pointing. But you can, a lot of times that glove is the easiest thing to see. So you can usually see, a small amount of the logo at address. And at address, we know the face is square. Now, if I'm coming into contact and I pause where my theoretical impact would be, and my hand looks more like this now you can see pretty much all the knuckles, right? You can see 4 knuckles. My watch is now pointing that way instead of at the target. This club face is wide open. So what happens is that when you add the golf ball, you're trying to hit the ball straight. You're trying to hit the ball in the center of the face. You're trying to make ball first contact. You're trying to swing on plane. There's all these things that you're trying to do. And a lot of times in your practice swing, you're not doing a lot of those things very well. You're leaving the face open usually. A lot of times you're swinging too much underplane. I see people who are working on the release of the club are swinging too much underplane, leaving the club face wide open. And actually, if you were to look from down the line and draw crosshairs on the golf ball, where the golf ball would be, you would likely see that the hosel of the club is also pretty much on the club or on the ball. You're also a lot of times not making any ground contact. You're just kind of swinging and brushing the turf or not even hitting the turf at all. A lot of times I get people who send me practice swings, they're swinging 6 inches above the turf. That's nothing like what you'd be doing in your actual golf swing. So I think if you are more stringent on what actually makes a good practice swing, which would be where you're nailing all of the positions, and theoretically, if a golf ball was there, it would end up in good contact. So it would end up in being where you come into contact, you have a square club face, you have forward shaft length. You're making ball for, basically you're hitting the ground about where the golf ball would be. You're swinging on plane instead of too much under plane or too much over the top. You're hitting the ball where the ball would be, pretty close to the center of the face. So whenever you're taking a practice swing, you always gotta want to be swinging to a spot. If you can be, a lot of times those mats that have the little lines mostly really hitting at that, the practice swing may not be as good as you actually think it is. It would be a poor strike. And intuitively, you're not going to do. Hopefully, it's not cutting out. I apologize if it's cutting out, but it keeps saying that it's reconnecting. Nothing's wrong with my internet. It's been fine all day. So hopefully, it doesn't do that anymore. But it's cutting. I think it's cutting out. I noticed that on the archived office hours, it cuts out sometimes, and I think it's because it's doing that reconnected thing. So hopefully there's no issues here. All right, so Ed D says, I come too much from the inside, and as a result, I have my shoulders too close at last parallel. The club is parallel, club face is closed, but on camera it appears behind my trail leg. Is the fix as simple as just feeling I swing more over the top? Is it a bad idea for me to focus on shallowing since I may be overdoing it? Yeah, you're probably already overdoing the shallowing. You probably just need to rotate. Because if you watch here, you may want to look at your hips and see if you're rotating. Now, you may be getting stuck. That could be what's going on. But there's usually one of two things going on. Either you're not rotating your hips or you are rotating your hips, but your upper body is getting stuck. So watch here. If I come down and I'm swinging too much from the inside, I'm not rotating my hips. See, my hips are they're kind of moving toward the target instead of rotating. So if you watch here, if I close off my shoulders, I don't rotate my hips and swing too much from the inside, it's going to look something like this. This is probably exaggerated form of what you're doing, but that's kind of what's going on there. So what you need to feel is basically that you're rotating the hips. Now, this may end up feeling like you're swinging over the top, because when you rotate your hips, if you keep your arms kind of in the same position, it's going to feel like you're swinging over the top compared to what you're doing before. Because what you're doing before may feel like you're on plane, but the reality is that you're swinging too much with me inside. Remember, feel isn't always real. So if you get to where you feel like you're coming over the top when you're rotating the hips open, then the reality is maybe that you're just coming down on plane really nicely like this. It may not actually be that you're going like that. So check that. See if the hips are opening up. Now, if the hips are opening up, this would be an example of the hips opening up, but the upper body getting stuck. Now, if you're coming in and you're like this, the elbow is kind of getting stuck behind the body. Your body is rotating open, but it's just your upper body is just kind of staying back like this. This is a little bit, it's not rare, but it's less common than the hips not rotating. The hips not rotating is the most common one. But if it's that, then you need to work on getting this elbow more in front of the body. Getting this elbow working in front of your shirt seam here as you're coming down. That's going to get you to where now I'm rotating. You can see that club now is now working more down on the plane that I want it to. So if the hips aren't opening up, then work on using that lead leg to really push into the ground and rotate the hips open. Because if the hips aren't rotating open, you're most likely kind of moving and doing this kind of action. So if you look from face on, it's going to look something like that. If you look from down the line, it's going to look something like that. My hips are kind of going out toward the ball, kind of basically, coming off the tush line. So feel like you're kind of pushing your hip back this way, back toward the wall. If you're standing up against the wall, you're trying to push your hip back up against the wall there. But a good drill on the website is a kick the clutch drill. That's a really great one to get you in that position. The wall drill. You can search for these drills on the website. There's a great search engine. I'll tell you how to do that here in a second. Now, if it's getting stuck, there's another drill on the website for getting stuck. That's the one to work on getting that lead elbow, or that trail elbow working toward the golf ball instead of behind you. That elbow gets behind you, then you're going to be, in this kind of position. And you're either going to make a compensation to come over the top, or you're going to swing away from the inside and close off your shoulders. So to get to those drills. So if you're not opening up the hips, check out the kick the clutch, check out the wall drill. You can search both of those. Just search the word clutch. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a little search box. Search the word clutch, CLUTCH. You'll find the word I'm talking about. I think it's kick the clutch for better hips or something like that. The video is called. It's a really great one to be using that lead leg to push into the ground. If you're on a mobile device, you'll want to click the little icons. It's 3 horizontal lines there. It's a little icon. You click on that, that'll expand a menu. And if you scroll down on that menu to the bottom of the menu, you'll see where you can search the word clutch and find the video that I'm talking about there. Now, the other drill I'm talking about, the wall drill, you can just search the word wall, W-A-L-L. And again, you'll find that video that I'm talking about. And the thumbnail of the video, Clay, is like standing up against the wall there. You'll know the one when you see it. Now, if you're getting stuck, you can use the word stuck to find the video that I'm talking about. There'll be several videos. Again, S-T-U-C-K. You can search that video. Every single one of them, it keeps disconnecting. I'm sorry, folks, if it's so yeah, work on that, and that'll get you to where you're in good shape, most likely. All right, so Nicholas P says, I currently don't have the space to hit balls, but can still get gains from the 20-minute distance fix just from swinging in front of a swing speed radar, or is it necessary to hit balls too? I saw gains of about 10 to 13 miles per hour from swinging, but wondering if they hit balls while doing so. So basically, Nicholas is asking if he needs to hit balls in doing the 20-minute distance fix. And the answer is no. But if you have the ability to hit balls, it would be better. So if you're wanting to work through the 20-minute distance fix and just swing in front of a machine like a swing speed radar or a PRGR or something that measures your club head speed, there's the supersonic thing. That one, you don't have to hit a ball. You just swing it, and it tells you how fast you're swinging. Like, these are all great devices that you can use to train your club head speed. So yeah, you can use all those. Would it be better if you use the ball? Yes, but can you still work through the 20-minute distance fix and get some gains if you're not hitting the ball? Absolutely. It's way better than sitting on your couch and doing nothing. Trust me. So if you want to work on your game, you want to work on getting some speed, you can work through that 20-minute distance fix without hitting a golf ball, just swinging a club. If you got the space to swing a club as hard as you can, then you can absolutely do that, and I highly recommend that you do. So that's a great way to get through the winter. Get your heart rate up a little bit too. Get a little exercise. I think we can all use a little bit of exercise. So that would all be fantastic to do. Yes, you can absolutely do that. All right. So Richard F says, I have developed a duck hook on my drives. What are some things to think about in practice to get rid of this? So first, let's understand what causes a hook. What makes the ball hook? In the simplest terms, it's just the club face being closed to the club path. What does that mean? Well, the club face, that's the direction the club face is pointing at contact, your face angle. So if that face angle is closed to the direction that the club head is moving, which is your club path, then that's going to be closed to the path. All right. So if you imagine, if my club face is straight toward the screen here, if that is straight, and if I closed this face and then had my path working out that way toward my plaque over here, if my club head was working, this is extreme, but if it was working that would result in a hook if I made center face contact. So what that would look like is something like this: the club head working underneath and my club head being closed. So imagine I'm swinging the club. If you're a right-handed golfer, you have a baseball field in front of me. I'm swinging toward first base, but my club face is pointed toward third base. That's basically what that is. So it looks something like that. So to fix that, to fix a hook, the easiest way to fix a hook is to try to hit a slice. It's really the easiest way to be able to do that. So what would that look like? That would look like swinging the club toward third base with the face open toward first base. So that would look something like this, right? So that's what I would try to do, is go out and try to feel like you're hitting a big old slice. So a lot of times the best way to fix any issue is to exaggerate the opposite. What's the opposite of a hook? It's a slice. It's a big old slice. So that's what I'd be trying to do. I'd be trying to hit a big old slice. And that's assuming you're making center face contact. Now, the hooks may be coming from what's called toe contact. So that's hitting it way out here on the toe. What happens is that when you hit the ball on the toe, the face will twist a little bit open, which will make the ball start a little bit more to the right for a right-handed golfer. But what happens is that ball will kind of turn on the face. Let me grab a ball here. That ball, if I hit it out on the toe, the face is going to twist a little bit open. So if you look from a top view, if I'm coming in, the club hits it, it'll twist a little bit open. And then what will happen is this ball will kind of roll toward the center of the face, and that puts this draw spin on it. So a lot of times now you can get it too far out on the toe, and the face will just open and it'll just go straight to the right. But if you hit it, it's really unstable out here. So it's hard to say how far. It really just depends on the club and the shaft and the head and all this stuff. But if you get it on the toe, a lot of times it will gear, which is what I was talking about, the ball crawling toward the middle of the face, is to use some foot powder spray. So go out, use some foot powder spray it on the club face, see where you're striking on the face. If you're hitting it on the toe every time and you're hitting those hooks, that's probably the problem. The easiest way to fix that is to normally wood and intentionally try to hit it off the heel. And if you do that, it will most likely move the strike closer to the center of the face. If you still hit it off the toe, then exaggerate it even more. Hit it off the hosel. I mean, that's how much you're going to need to exaggerate that. Some feelings that can help you to get it off the heel would maybe to feel like you're in your toes as you're coming into contact. So instead of feeling like you're kind of hanging back, and that may get you to where you're striking it on the toe, feel like you're maybe on your toes more as you're coming into contact. That's not the reality of what's going to happen, but it's just a feeling of something you could do. You could be standing too far away from the golf ball. If you're standing out like this, that's too far away most likely. Stand up closer to the golf ball, and that may make it easier for you to get that strike more in the center of the face or in the heel. So try those feelings and see if that helps you to get that strike more in the center of the face. Now, if it is in the center of the face and it's just a matter of your face being too close to the target, try to hit that slice. If you're a right-handed golfer, swing toward third base with the face pointed toward first base. If you hit a big old slice, that's great. That's perfect. All you got to do now is ease off of that a little bit to straighten it out. So maybe instead of feeling like you're swinging toward third base, the face toward first base, I'd maybe try to feel like you're swinging toward the shortstop with the face pointed toward the second baseman. Just try to ease off of that a little bit. And if you hit a little bit of a draw, then just try to exaggerate it a little bit more. Basically, you're just trying to adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. So go ahead and go out there and try that and see if you can get that strike or that ball pattern in a much better position there. All right, so keep getting your questions on here. Looks like we got several on here. I'll do my best to answer everybody's question. All right, so Tom M says, how wide is the stance at setup? Lots of disagreement on the subject. If I move my head too much on the backswing, should I use a narrower stance to help avoid the movement with my head? So there's a lot of, I guess maybe there's a lot of disagreement on this subject because it's really to each their own. You're going to look on tour and you're going to see a lot of players with narrow stances. And you're going to see a lot of players with really wide stances and everything in between. It's really personal preference. You got to find what works best for you. So there's advantages to a wider stance. So a wider stance makes it makes you a little bit more stable, right? You can feel the ground pressure a little bit more with a wide stance. It's a little bit harder to rotate with a wide stance. So I can't rotate my hips as much with a wide stance. That's a con to it. It helps me to get behind the ball. If I'm hitting my driver, I actually like to take a little bit wider stance with my driver. If I'm hitting my driver, it helps me to get behind the ball a little bit more, to hit up on it a little bit more. So there are some advantages and some disadvantages to it. Now, a narrower stance is a little bit less stable. You're a little bit more mobile with it, though. Now I can turn my hips more with a narrower stance. It's a little bit harder to hit. I'm going to tend to hit more down on the ball with a narrower stance. So it's really personal preference. What I'd recommend doing is actually going out and trying an extreme wide stance, and then narrow that, hit a few shots from there, then narrow that up a little bit, hit a few more shots, narrow that up until you get to where basically your feet, do a progression, a few shots at every progression until your feet are basically close together, and then take a few shots from there and see what works best for you. See what's the best for you. If you're someone who moves off the ball, just because you have a wide stance doesn't mean you're not still going to do that. Like I'm going to use a wide stance right here. I can still move off the ball if I want to. It doesn't mean it's going to stop you. Now, it may be a little bit more difficult to do that, but it doesn't mean that you're not going to still do that. So if you're moving off of the ball and swaying a lot, it's most likely because your stable fluid spine is not good. You're probably reverse pivoting a little bit. Make sure that you're getting that pressure on the inside of your foot and pushing your hip back and rotating your hip back. If you're swaying and sliding your hips that way, that means you're not rotating. Because watch, if I slide my hips, I'm not really rotating, right? If I don't sway my hips and I just rotate, then that's going to be a much better position. That's going to allow me to rotate my shoulders and be in a much better place at the top and get that power turn. So I look at that on video, but check at that. Use the stance that works best for you. You don't have to use one that this instructor says or that instructor says. Everyone's going to have the reasons for why they think one's better. Honestly, the golf ball doesn't care how wide your stance is. All it cares about is how you present this golf club to it at contact. That's all it cares about. And if you do that better with a narrow stance, then that's fine. If you do it better with a wider stance, then that's fine. All right, so Alan B says, do you have any tips to help me get right through the swing to achieve the full finish? I'm convinced I am not fully accelerating through impact, and I find that many times my highest swing speeds are with a 3/4 swing. So if you're not getting into that full finish position, it's hard for me to know exactly what's going on without seeing your swing, but I will tell you the number one thing I see with people who don't finish their swing, and I'll angle this down so you can see my feet here. The number one thing I see is people keep this trail foot planted in the ground. They don't allow it to come up. Because watch, if I'm coming through contact and I keep my trail heel on the ground, I don't lift it up at all, it's going to be hard for me to keep rotating. Like that's as much as I can rotate my hips. I can't really come all the way around this angle. I got to get this heel coming off the ground so that I can get all the way up on my toes. You want to be able to look from this angle here. You want to be able to see when I'm in the full finish. You want to come all the way around, get my hips pointed to the target here, get my chest coming all the way around so it's nice and high and pointing left of the target. And I want to get my heel coming get all the way up on my toes here so you can see all the spikes on the bottom of my shoe. And that only comes from getting that heel off the ground. So loosen that up, let that come off the ground. Don't keep it on the ground. If you keep it on the ground, it's going to act as an anchor for your hips. It's not going to allow you to rotate through contact. So loosen that heel up. That's going to allow you to come all the way around into the full finish there. Do some practice swings working on that in the backyard or something like that, and then go out to the range and work on it, and you'll get in some much better positions there. All right. So Tom M says, where should the right elbow be pointing at address? At address, right elbow is going to be pointing pretty much toward the hip. So if you look here, if I'm set up like this, and I'm set, and I have my stance here, my elbow is going to be pointing pretty close to my right hip. Now, if I have a stronger grip like that, which is completely fine, this would be a pretty extreme strong grip. My elbow is going to be pointing more, more like in here, between my belt buckle and my hip. If I have a very weak grip, so I look like that, my elbow might be pointing a little bit outside my hip. So that's completely fine. It's really personal preference there. Again, the golf ball does not care where your elbow is at address. It only cares about how you bring that club into impact. So if having a stronger grip gets you into impact in a better position, and that gets your elbow pointing more between your belt buckle and your hip, then that's completely fine. If having a neutral grip where your elbow is basically pointing right at your hip joint, and that gets you in a better impact position, then fantastic. I think you get where I'm going with this, but again, it seems like you're kind of stressing on the really, really small things. These are things that don't really matter that much. The only things that matter as far as technique is concerned and that gets you into the best impact positions are the 5 pieces of the Top Speed Golf system. So making sure your spine is stable and nice and angled away at address at the top of the swing, and then more angled away as we're coming into contact. Making sure that you're in those positions. Making sure that you're getting a full shoulder turn, getting the shoulders to turn fully in the backswing. Making sure you're getting some lag in the downswing, getting some good lag there as you're coming down. Also making sure that you're getting into a good compression line. So lead angle, lead hip, lead shoulder, all in a straight line there, slightly angled away at contact. It's going to look something like that as I come into contact. Making sure that we're releasing this club properly, getting that club to release out in front. So I'm coming in, I got my impact here, and then I release that club out in front about 45 degrees. That's the piece of the Top Speed Golf system. If you're doing all those things, it doesn't matter where your elbow is pointing. It doesn't matter if you have a wide or narrow stance. If you're nailing all those pieces, that's really the thing that matters most. That's going to get you in the best impact position. So focus on the things. If you do all those things right, it's going to take care of 95% of the issues in your golf swing. So if that's the things I would focus on. If you're doing all those things, then it's okay to kind of tweak in things and get that remaining 5%. But if you're not, that's really going to fix a lot of the issues is getting those pieces right. All right, so let's go on to the next question here. So Wayne V says, Clay talks of rotating club on downswing to get bowed left wrist using an iron in video. Does same hold true using the driver? Yes. We're wanting to square the club face with the driver as well. That's how you're wanting to square the club face. Now with a driver, you're not going to appear to have as much forward shaft length just because the club is more further up in your stance. So if you imagine I don't have a driver in here, but pretend that I'm gonna tell you when this is going to be a driver. So right now I have an iron. I'm coming into contact, and this is what I look like at contact, right? So I have some forward shaft length at contact. I've turned this handle down. I've got this club face square. I got forward shaft length at contact. This is my impact position. Now with the driver, it's really the same thing. The only difference is now my contact point is up here. So now you can see, now pretend I have a driver. My contact point is more in front. it's several inches in front of where it was with the iron. And I'm hitting up on the golf ball. Now you can see I don't have a ton of forward shaft lean here. Pretty much don't. The club's pretty much straight up and down. But that's only because the contact point is more ahead and up off the ground. So you can see that's what it looks like there. I'm still turning the handle down, squaring the face as I'm coming into contact. It's just that contact point is happening more in front. It's happening so that I can hit up on the golf ball. So yes, you're doing the same thing. The move, which is basically what you're referring to there, that applies to the irons as well as the driver, as well as wedges. Anything that you're wanting to get some forward shaft lean and square the face, it's applying to all of those clubs. All right, so Jim G says, working on swing changes by swinging very slowly with exaggerated positions. Can get it right with super slow swings, but when I try to increase speed, still well below full speed, old habits start creeping back in. How do you go from super slow to faster swings and maintain changes? You just got to keep on getting repetitions and getting more comfortable with it. That's basically, if you're making swing changes and it's things that are happening in the downswing, you got to think the downswing, it happens in a quarter of a second. It's a snap of you got to really slow and get more comfortable with the positions. And it takes a lot of time and repetition to be able to do that. On the website, if you've gone through the system, you notice that we ask you to do 1,000 repetitions. That's not just because we want to keep you busy and take forever doing the stuff. It's more than that usually. So, keep that in mind whenever you're working on this stuff, that, it's going to be, it's going to take time. If it was easy, then everyone would do it. That's basically how it goes, right? If it was really easy to make swing changes in the downswing and stuff like that, then everyone would be a scratch golfer. Everyone would be playing on tour, but that's just not the way it works. Now, making swing changes, it's not for everybody. Not everyone is cut out to be able to do it. It's hard to change things that you do that feel unnatural to you. But it takes time and repetition. And if you put it in, you're going to be proud of it when you get to that point and when you're able to get forward shaft lean and things like that. Think about the best players that you know. All right. The best players that you know are going to fall into some categories. They're either going to be guys that just play. They just play a ton of golf. And maybe they don't have the best, swing, but they just play a ton of golf. So those people are highly skilled players, very, very highly skilled. They've built their skill. They've basically, everything is hand-eye coordination that they've built up. And not everyone's going to be able to do that, but they've just built up hand-eye coordination. This is basically how I was able to play college golf. I had very good hand-eye coordination. I played a ton of golf. I just played as much as I possibly could. I didn't have a real great swing, but I just played as much as I possibly could. Now, the downside to that, the upside to it is that, one, you get to play a ton of golf. It's probably more fun, and it doesn't feel like it's as much work or as much tedious or anything like that. The downside to it is that if I take time off, rust is going to set in because now you're not going to be as good. Basically you're losing your basically your coordination. You're losing that magic basically that you had. The skill level is going down. Whereas you might have somebody who has great technique, but you probably know that guy that doesn't play very often, but has a fantastic swing, and he can go out and he can shoot 68 and not even wink about it and not even think about it. It's just nothing. He never practices. Well, that's the guy that has great technique. And some people naturally have great technique. I know we hate those people, right? But some people don't. Most people don't. Most people naturally do not have, naturally are not nailing all the pieces of the Top Speed Golf system. But I have had some students that tell me they're beginner golfers and they're basically nailing every piece of the Top Speed Golf system. It's just that their skill level, they're still like a 30 handicap because their skill level is super low. So, for those people, we build up their skill level, right? But for some people who've been playing golf forever, and a lot of times the people who are trying to go from the guy that plays a ton of golf and has a high skill level, it's even harder for those people to change their technique because it's so fully ingrained in what you're doing. You've been doing it for years, probably, especially you've been playing golf for a long time. It's going to take a long time to get those motions back in. So you just got to slowly get faster and faster and faster with it. So let's say you're working on something and you're trying to get to where you're getting some forward shaft lean and you can only get it at what would be 30% of your normal speed. Well, the next time you practice it, you're just trying to go faster than that. That's all you're trying to do is go faster than that. And maybe you get up to where you can go 35% of your normal speed. And then the next time you work on it, you're just trying to get 35%. So you're just trying to make progression as you go along. You know what? Some days you suck. Some days you're going to go and you're going to go 30% speed. And then the next time you go practice it, you're only going to be able to get it at 25% speed. Right? Some days you're going to take a step backward, but that's just part of the process. Failing is part of the process. You just got to keep at it. And like I said, it's not for everyone, but that's what it takes to make the change. If you're, I go back to the typing analogy a lot. People, if you're learning how to do something that is happening in the blink of a second, you have to do it to where it's naturally, it's just, it's as natural as typing a sentence. If you've been trained to type or something like that, it takes time and repetition to do that. You think about how long it took you to learn how to type. It took you a long time to do that. And actually, learning how to type is probably easier than changing your golf swing, especially if you've ingrained. It's like you've learned one way to type, and then you're learning a completely different way to type, right? It would be like if you took the keyboard and turned it upside down, and now you've learned how to type with the keyboard a certain way, and now you take the keyboard and you turn it upside down. Now you have to learn, your other way that you're going to type. You're going to push the numbers trying to hit the space button. That's just what you're going to do because that's what's ingrained into your system. But if you train it and you go really, really slow and you start to realize, okay, the numbers are down here now and the space is up here. The enter button is on the other side. The escape is now over here. You got to learn where all these buttons are now, and it takes time and repetition to do that. If you just started out with the upside down keyboard and you didn't have the other way in place, then that's, you're actually going to learn a lot faster. So keep that in mind. Use the typing reference. It's actually harder than learning how to type from scratch. It's like learning how to type on an upside down keyboard after you've learned how to type on a normal keyboard. Imagine the difficulty that would be. So understand that it takes time. It's not for everyone. Listen, I've gone through the same thing. I want to just do it. You'll put in the time, you'll put in the effort. Some people. All right. So Edward B says, how accurate is the SC200? Sometimes I hit a ball to a known distance and the call out is something way off. Both long and short, the SC200 is great. So let's talk about the SC200 a little bit. Well, unfortunately, the SC200, they no longer make it. The SC200 Plus, they changed some things on it, so it actually made it less accurate than it is now. But the SC200 is one that we used to promote because it's a fantastic device, but it's not a perfect device. Devices that are $18,000 and $25,000 are not perfect devices either. They have Flight Scope, GC Quad, TrackMan. They have misreadings too. It happens all the time. So keep that in mind. And for a fraction of the price, you can't expect to get a device that is better than or is as accurate or as reliable as the $18,000, $25,000 devices. So keep that in mind whenever you're working on these things. So a couple of things about the SC200. So the SC200 is programmed never to have an error. So basically what happens is that you can hit a ball, and if it doesn't get your club head speed, it always get your ball speed. So the ball speed is one of the easiest things to get because one, it's moving faster. So it's easier to get because it's moving faster within their speed zone. And then the other thing is that it's a symmetrical object. It's a perfectly round object that it can just latch onto it and it can get it every single time. Your club head is not a perfectly round object. It's not a symmetrical object. There's especially if you have a driver that has all these nooks and crannies. This iron has a cavity back here, and there's all kinds of nooks and crannies and things going on here. It's hard for these things to lock on to something and to track that. It's hard to do that. But the ball is easier. So sometimes it will miss the club head speed, and it will basically back calculate what your club head speed is. It'll kind of guess what it is based on what your ball speed was. So keep that in mind. If you get one, if you're using range balls, especially if you're using limited flight balls, and it tells you that you got a 1.49 smash factor, the best that you can usually get with your driver is about 1.5 smash factor. Your smash factor is your ratio of your ball speed to your club head speed. So let's say that you swing 100 miles per hour and your ball speed is 150 miles per hour. That's your ball speed to your club head speed is going to be 1.5. That'd be that's about the perfect smash factor that you can get. If you're getting higher than 1.5, it's possible, and you're getting that consistently all the time, there's a good chance that your driver might be illegal. Actually, it might be a little bit too hot. So keep that in mind. But basically, that's the best you can do. So with the range ball, I know the range balls at the course that we're at, the best you can get is about 1.45 smash factor. So I know whenever it tells me I get 1.49 or 1.5 smash factor, I know it didn't really get the ball or the club head speed. It probably got the ball speed and then back calculated. So sometimes it'll tell you that you got a lower club head speed based on the ball speed there. So keep that in mind whenever you're working through that. But yeah, as far as the estimated distance, the swing caddy, it doesn't know if it's windy. It doesn't know that your ball is limited flight. It doesn't know. It's just basing on the club head speed, the ball speed. It does measure the atmospheric conditions, the temperature and the pressure in the air. They kind of go into their algorithm, but it doesn't make that huge of it. If it's extreme temperatures, it can definitely make a difference. But there's not going to be that much of a difference between a 70 and 80 degree day. But there's going to be a big difference between a 50 and a 90 degree day. But not 10 degrees isn't really going to make much of a difference on the estimation. But it's estimating your distance. So keep that in mind. It's purely estimating your distance. It's really all it's doing. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. It's really just estimating your distance there. But on a well-struck shot, in good conditions where there's no wind, it's still, and things like that, we found it to be pretty accurate on the distances. So as long as you're striking the ball in the center of the face and hitting the ball well, and you're using normal golf balls, we found compared to $18,000 machines like the Flight Scope and the GC Quad, that the SC200 was pretty accurate. But if you hit it off the toe or something like that, you hit it. All right. So Edward B says tool has helped a lot. Cool. Oh yeah, you talk about the SC200. Yeah, SC200. I think it's a great tool, especially for club head speed. To be reading your club head speed. Yeah, I think it's a really good one. Unfortunately, they don't make them anymore. They discontinued them, but yeah, it's a great device for working on that. Q. Hey, Ralph. David H says, I am improving yet consistently have one or two high scoring holes per round. Any mental tips on how to avoid one hole wreck your score? So typically when people have these holes, these blow up holes, it usually starts with one shot, and then everything, it just kind of snowballs from there. So my best advice, whenever I had, an issue where, I had this big hole, it was almost always because I had one shot that kind of set the whole thing in motion. And keep in mind, you're going to have high scores sometimes. You're going to have a big hole every now and then. The best players in the world have big holes, big triples and quads and things like that. So keep in mind, it's going to happen every now and then, even to the best players in the world. But the best way to keep, to turn a quad into a double bogey or something like that is to not compound the issue. So if you hit your drive out of bounds, right, just refocus, make an adjustment if you need to, refocus. Don't dwell on what, the bad part and how bad this hole is going to go. And man, I'm going to make a big number now. I had a great round going and all that. Don't dwell on that. I know it's not easy to do, but focus on the shot. Just focus on, get back into your routine, focus on what you need to do, and stay focused on that, and hit and execute the shot, and do that same thing on the next one. Because I play with people all the time that they're playing fine, then they just they hit a bad shot, and then the whole hole becomes this whole thing where they lose focus. They're upset. All they're doing is thinking about the bad shot, and then when they hit another bad shot, they're thinking about those two bad shots, and then when they hit another bad shot, it just compounds over and over and over. Focus on, regroup, because if you hit one bad shot, a lot of times you can still make bogey, or at worst double. Make it to where the worst score you take is to focus on making that double or that bogey. Don't focus on, oh, this is going to be a big hole. Like, I play with people all the time. Like, I'm going to make it. They're telling the hole's not even over. They're hitting their fourth shot, and there's like, oh, this is going to be an 8. Like, you're hitting your approach to the green. If you get this up and down, you're making a 5, right? So don't, be positive about what you're doing. Regroup, and that's the best advice I can give you for sure. So Timothy F says, hey, Q, working on clearing hips coming down, but my hand shaft plane tend to follow hips coming into ball steep with strikes off the toe. Should I keep the shoulders back and turn the door handle right, or would you recommend a different thought? So Timothy, it's hard to say without seeing your swing, but what it sounds to me is what you're doing is you're rotating the hips, but everything's coming with it. So the shoulders, the arms, the hands, the club, everything's kind of coming with it. So if you were someone who didn't turn the hips before and you came into contact like this, then if you just turn the hips and don't change anything else, then you're going to go like that, right? So what you need to feel like is that the arms and the hands and everything are more behind you. Because before, when you weren't rotating the hips, the arms and the hands and the club were flying in front of the body like that. That was on plane, right? That was to get the club on plane. In order to, if you don't rotate your hips, then the arms have to come out in front of the body like that in order to have the club on plane. Whereas if I rotate the body open, now my club is coming over the top. So you need to feel like it's more behind you. And you mentioned turning the doorknob to the right. From my perspective, holding this club, that's turning to the right. To your perspective, it's going to be to the left. But that's the feeling that I'm having. For a right-handed golfer, that's the feeling. I'm feeling like my hands are more behind me, and that my club, I'm turning that doorknob to the right. And now, look, I'm rotating my hips, and I'm in that good position as I'm coming down. I'm not coming out here. I'm in that good position. It's going to feel like your arm is pressed up against your chest, because before you were coming down and the arms are just swinging in front of the body, right? Whereas now you're going to feel like your arm, your lead arm here, is pressed up against your chest here. It's almost like if you had an orange in your armpit here, you'd be squeezing that orange and trying to squeeze it up against your chest. That's what it's going to feel like as you're coming down here, and that's going to allow you to open up to the golf ball as you're coming down. So kind of get that feeling, turn the doorknob to the right, get this arm kind of cinched to the chest here, connected to the chest. Feel like it's going to feel like the club and everything's way more behind you than it was before, because before it was way out here, right? You weren't opening up at all, and the club was way out here, and you were just swinging it in front of your body. Whereas now, if you're rotating your hips open, the club is more behind you, and the arm's more cinched to the chest, and that's going to help you to get that to work on plane. So I definitely work on that feeling, but turning the doorknob to the right is what you're going to need to do with that, because if you don't, so let's say I'm doing that, I'm getting my arm cinched to my chest, I have this club steep. Well, if this club is steep, I'm going to need to stand up to make a compensation in the downswing, and I'm just going to end up going like that anyway. So make sure that you're turning that doorknob to the right to shallow out the club as well. Nicholas D says, when playing a 3-wood off the tee, is there a foot? So you can play it when you're hitting a 3-wood off of a tee. You can play it two ways. You can play it similarly to where you would on the ground, where you're just using the tee to basically give you like a perfect lie, as if you were hitting it off the ground. You can play it that same kind of way. It won't have as much distance. You may have a little bit more control of it because it's going to be a little bit more spinny because you are hitting down on it just a little bit. So you're going to have just a little bit more spin on it, and it won't go quite as far, but it may be a little bit more controlled. Now, if you're wanting to launch it out there and hit a 3-wood basically as far as you possibly can, then you can hit it just like you would with the driver. Now, you can't tee it up as high because a driver is like that tall and a 3-wood is like that tall, right? So you want to tee it up to where about half of the ball is above the crown of the 3-wood. And that's going to allow you to have enough space to hit up on the golf ball. And again, yes, you'll play it up in your stance a little bit. It won't be as much with the driver because with the driver, remember, it's a much taller face. The face is like that tall with the driver, right? So we can play that ball further up in our stance and hit more up on the golf ball. But with that 3-wood, I wouldn't play it as far up in the stance as you would with the driver. I'd move it a ball or two back because you don't have as much space to work the club up into the golf ball. Now, you can try to do that, but man, that's tough. Imagine if you're teeing the golf ball up, this high with your 3-wood, I mean, you could swing clear underneath that thing. So it's just going to be more difficult, more a degree of difficulty there. So you'll have a larger margin for error if you tee it to where just half of the ball is above the crown of the club. Play it not as far up in front of as you would the driver, a ball or two back of that, and that's going to give you enough room to work the ball, work the club up into the golf ball and be able to get a nice high launch, low spin kind of shot. It'll go a little bit further. You might have a little bit less control of it because it's going to have less spin. But yeah, try those different versions. See which one you like the best, and stick with that one. You can hit both of them too. If you want to take a little bit off your 3-wood, and maybe it's like a drivable par 4. That's or a long par 3 that you're trying to hit your 3-wood on. You want to take a little bit off of it, and you want it to have some spin. You may want to hit it like you hit it off the ground and just tee it up high enough to where it's like a perfect lie. Or if you're trying to launch it and get it down the fairway as much as you can, then hitting it like you would a driver would be the best way to go, probably. So David H says, regarding the move with the wrist, how aggressive should I be with the rollover when hitting the driver? It makes perfect sense with long irons, mid irons, but facing that big driver head straight down at 9 o'clock has not worked for me yet. Remember, this is an exaggeration. I think David might be working on 1.2 from the move, and that's where you're coming down and you're turning this handle down. You're really, really exaggerating that. Remember, you're exaggerating it. That's not really what's going on. Typically, with the position you're actually going to be in about this point in the swing is going to be about right there. The toe's going to be up. It's just a feeling. Now, what a lot of people are doing, people who are not turning this handle down, they're like this position. That club face is wide open, right? And then they got to really roll it over hard to square it up at impact. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to get that face a little bit more square so that you can rotate into contact and be able to have a good impact position. So it's really the same as it is with the iron. It's just the only difference is that with the iron, you're hitting down and through the ball. The ball's a little bit further back in your stance. With the driver, you're hitting up and through the ball. The ball's further up in your stance. So that's really the only difference between the two. You're doing the same thing with both of them. Now, keep in mind, the driver is going to be a little bit harder than any other club. It's a longer club, so it's a little bit harder to control. So keep that in mind whenever you're working on these things, is that it's going to be a little bit more difficult just because it's a longer club. Just by nature, it's going to be harder to hit. It's the same reason why your 3-wood is harder to hit than a wedge, right? And your 8 iron's harder to hit than maybe your pitching wedge. It's because it's a longer club. It's harder to control just by nature. So you're doing the same thing. You just got to work your way up to it. All right. So Richard S. says, when I hit my driver off the tee, I'm not getting the ball in the air. I'm hitting it about 120 yards on the ground. I've tried moving the ball up in my stance and back my stance. If these things have worked, neither of these things have worked. Any suggestions? So it sounds like to me that you're hitting it probably low on the face would be my guess. So driver faces they're bulged not only across the face, so from the heel to the toe, but also from the bottom of the face to the top of the face it's bulged. So the degrees that you see on the driver, that is to the center of the face. So lower on the face can be 3 degrees less. So let's say you have a 9-degree driver. If you hit it on the bottom of the face, that's going to be 6 degrees. That can be about 6 degrees. Conversely, on the upper part of the face, that can be 12 degrees if you have a 9-degree driver. So keep that in mind. So it sounds like that's probably what's going on, is you're hitting it really low, maybe low and on the heel, what I'd recommend doing is getting some foot powder spray. You can get this at any like pharmacy, any big store like a Target or something like that that has a pharmacy. They're going to have some foot powder spray. Get some foot powder spray, spray it on the club face, and hit some balls. See where you're striking it on the club face. Now, let's say that you are striking it low on the club face. If you put it further up in your stance, that may be compounding the issue, because what may be happening, it's hard to say without seeing your swing, but what may be happening is this club may be coming down, bottoming out, and then working up, 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 and then you're hitting it on the low part of the face. So moving it where it bottoms out and then works up to where it's in the center of the face, that might be what you need to do. I'm actually working with a student right now that his spine angle was too much angled away. So he was like this at address, very, very angled away. He was in that like 14-degree angled away, very, very angled away. And then because he was so far angled away, this club works a lot from the inside. And what he would do is he would come too much from the inside, and then he would actually stand up as he was coming through contact, because or subconsciously he felt like he was going to hit the ground as he's coming through. So what he do? He would stand up to make room for the club, and then he would overcompensate for that. So that may be what's going on with you. I don't see that all the time, but that could be what's going on. It's hard for me to know exactly what's going on, but I would see where you're striking it on the club face. If you're striking it low on the club face, the easiest advice I can give you is to try to hit it higher on the face. Intentionally try to hit it on the high part of the face. So that's what I'd recommend doing. Visualize hitting the crown of the club. If you got it too high, or if you got it too far up in the stance, it may be working too much up. You can look at that on video and see if the club's really bottoming out and then working too much up into the stance. If your spine angle is too far angled away, you can have that club working too much up into the golf ball, hitting it low on the face, and that may be what's happening there too. So it's hard to say without seeing your swing, but we do have a program where you can send your video, and I can look at your swing and tell you exactly what you need to work on. It's our unlimited swing review program. It's really, really cool. If you're interested, click the Learn More button above the video there. That will take you to the swing review page. And I don't have any spots available right now, unfortunately, but what you can do is you can join my waiting list so that you can get notified next time I have spots available. Unfortunately, I can only work with a limited number of students. There are only so many hours in the day. So if you like to work with me, join that waiting list. That waiting list fills up. So, the last time that I've opened up spots, we sent it out to the waiting list, and I actually sold out to the waiting list. So if you don't join the waiting list, there's a good possibility you'll never get notified that my spots will open up. If you see a spot there, grab it. If you want to work with me, go ahead and grab it. But if not, you'll want to join that waiting list so that you can be on the list of people that get notified first when I open up spots. So, all right. So if there's no more questions, thanks everybody for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time, to answer more of your questions. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you next time.